Hello, everyone. Welcome to our PSR webinar, Still Here, Maximizing the Impact of the Anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Before we jump into the program today, I wanted to leave some room for introductions from the people that you'll be hearing from, and I'll start. I'm Alan Hester. I'm the Grassroots Coordinator for Physicians for Social Responsibility at the National Office in Washington, D.C., specifically focused on nuclear weapons abolition. And I'll pass it to Martin to introduce himself.
Hey folks, thanks for joining us today. This is Martin Fleck, and I am the Director of the Nuclear Weapons Abolition Program at Physicians for Social Responsibility. So glad you could be with us. And I'll pass it. Oh, you pass it. Yeah, you're the MC.
Thank you. I will pass it to Anna Baker.
Hi, everybody. I'm Anna Baker. I'm the Executive Director and the one and only staff at Greater Boston PSR. I always like to point out that we were the founding chapter of PSR, so we're proud of that. And I'm looking forward to having more of a joint effort on this Hiroshima-Nagasaki commemorative event. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. And I just want to thank everyone for being here today. We know that we have a combination of chapter activists, members, state allies registered to be part of this call. So many of you have been instrumental in growing this campaign, sharing it with your networks and coalitions. And I just want to thank all the things that many of you have done for this campaign already. But I also want to acknowledge that there are a ton of different movements and issues that all of us could be focused on right now. And we're so thankful that all of you are taking the time to be part of this effort. And I think I can speak for the coalition that's working on this campaign when I say that we want this to contribute to the wider push for social justice and social change. And we're thankful to everyone who's contributing to that push, both in this specific campaign and in other movements happening in our communities. So our main priority on today's call is to get you up to speed with the campaign around the upcoming anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as leave plenty of time to answer any lingering questions you may have. And if you have any questions, as we're going through the presentation today, please type it into the question box and we'll be sure to answer it as many as we can in the second half of this call. And if you have any follow-up questions after the presentation today, we'll be linking our emails at the end of the slides. So please feel free to follow up with us after the call. And lastly, we'll be recording this call. So if someone you knew or a member of your organization couldn't attend this webinar but wanted to, there will be a recording available that we will share out afterwards. But I'm going to start by passing it to Martin to give us some background and context on the anniversary.
Why, hey, thanks. I want to tell folks that if you're wondering where is the question box that Alan was just referring to, there should be a GoToWebinar control panel that you can see on your screen. If you find that, questions is one of the items on that menu, and that's where you want to click to ask questions, because that is a big part of the purpose of the whole webinar. Okay, catching up with the campaign, PSRs Roll. PSR is unabashedly pushing for the abolition of nuclear weapons. From a medical perspective, one is too many. So we're shooting for abolition, and that's why our program is called the Nuclear Weapons Abolition Program. Hiroshima and Nagasaki every year is an excellent opportunity where people are familiar with that story, and we can help underline the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons and get into people's imagination about why we need to get rid of them. PSR has a chapter or a network of chapters, and many of those have been organizing Hiroshima-oriented events for years. I was involved. I was the director of the Washington chapter in Seattle for 16 years. And every year we did a gigantic Hiroshima-Nagasaki event. And I think that the first one out there in Washington State was in 1979. And it could have been before that. So PSR, we're a likely candidate to be promoting local events around the country. And we've traditionally taken responsibility to track events in the USA that are both done by PSR chapters, but also non-PSR organizations. This year's special, of course, it's the 75th anniversary. Unfortunately, right, a pandemic came along, which has thrown a wrench into things, but nevertheless, it's still the 75th anniversary, and we want to make the most of that commemoration. and we've been working with a group of national and local organizations, developed a joint statement that most of you have probably seen, 137 sign-ons so far on that. 16 chapters and PSR National sign on to that statement. And myself and Alan and Liberty, our summer intern, will all be working hard to prepare. So, what we know about events in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Someone's got some noise in the background, so watch it. What we know about events in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I actually reached out to Jackie Cabasso, Paul Kavika Martin, and Kathleen Sullivan, 3 people I figured would know, and did get some news back about what's happening. So you should know that Hibakusha are atomic bomb survivors. So as we commemorate the bombings, it's important to keep them front and center. Typically on Hiroshima Day and in Nagasaki on August the 9th, thousands of activists would descend on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they'd have huge world conferences, and they float lanterns, and the media is there, and it's a big event. What I'm hearing is that they will be scaling that back significantly in terms of in-person, but they're still planning to involve thousands of people in virtual events. The mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki typically issue statements, and there's no reason why they wouldn't do that again this year. It looks as though travel is being discouraged right now, and so people will probably not be coming from all over the world and descending on those places. There's a gigantic organization, and I don't know if I can pronounce it right, Jinsukyo, and they say they're going to convene the 2020 World Conference against A and H bombs online on August 2 to 9, so a couple of different time zones in there. And with focusing on the signature campaign in support of the appeal of the Hibakusha, and they call on everyone to plan many varieties of creative actions in your cities and countries in keeping with your own conditions. So that's what's going on in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What we know about ICANN's plans, ICANN is the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. PSR is a proud partner organization. I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar belong to other partner organizations. And their theme, ICANN's theme, will be remember the Hibakusha and act. Honor them and make sure they live to see the beginning of the end of nuclear weapons. So ICANN is also focusing actions on the Hibakusha appeal, and that's one reason why the Hibakusha appeal has become part of what we're organizing around here in the United States. So ICANN will be tracking events all around the world, whereas we'll be tracking events here in the US. They're going to launch their own microsite. They plan to commission and produce a series of weekly content pieces about different survivors, different angles of the humanitarian impact, etc. So if you're on social media, you'll be seeing ICANN content coming out. Then finally, the Hibakusha appeal itself is amazing. It was launched as an international signature campaign in April of 2016. Then the following July, the ban treaty was adopted by 122 countries at the UN. And so the Hibakusha appeal was actually changed to specifically support the ban treaty. And they've been collecting a lot, they being mostly the Jinsukyo and other Japanese peace organizations have been collecting a lot of signatures on this thing. It was launched by the actual atomic bomb survivors, so this is a great way to honor them. And on October 11th, one of the Hibakusha delivered 10.5 million signatures to the UN on the Hibakusha appeal. That's an ongoing signature drive, and we've already got millions of signatures on there. So consider setting up a local signature campaign, and you could feature the Hibakusha appeal at your own organization's website. You can visit the new Hiroshima Nagasaki website for more information about that. And the short version of it is earnestly desiring the elimination of nuclear weapons without delay. We, the Hibakusha, call on all state governments to conclude a treaty to ban and eliminate nuclear weapons. Okay, I think that's it. Alan?
Thanks, Martin. So I wanted to spend a few minutes going over this new standalone Hiroshima-Nagasaki website that Martin just mentioned. So if you go to HiroshimaNagasaki75.org, you can follow around the website with me, or you can just keep watching the presentation, and I will go over some of the key features. So I won't highlight every aspect of the website, but I wanted to focus a few features that I thought people on this call would be most interested in. First off is a lot of individuals and organizations on the call, including a ton of PSR chapters, signed on to the positioning statement, which you can find if you go to the About tab on the website and then scroll down to Partners. If you go there, you'll see the positioning statement that everyone who's part of this campaign signed on to. It really helps center the campaign, and it also is the reason that all of these groups I'm about to show you got involved with this campaign. So I welcome you to check this out if you're someone who's looking at getting on this large list of organizations that have endorsed. If you haven't endorsed the positioning statement yet, you can endorse just below it on this Become a Partner section. There's a link right here where you can sign on your organization. And then below that is the list of all the organizations that have signed on to the positioning statement of this campaign, as well as links to individual organizations. So if I scroll down here, I can click on Positions for Social Responsibility San Francisco, and it should take me to their website. So yes, this is a great way if you haven't, if you're still looking at getting your other coalition members involved, this is a great way to show them where their organization will show up if they decide to join. Oh, and I just realized I almost forgot one aspect I wanted to show, two aspects actually. First is the Voices tab. The center of this entire campaign has been to lift up the voices of not only Hibakusha, but other communities that have been negatively impacted by nuclear weapons. So if you go to this tab and scroll down here, you will get individual stories from Hibakusha, which is obviously a main key focus of this campaign and this anniversary, but also you can learn more about different communities such as downwinders at different test sites, atomic cleanup veterans, and Marshallese Islanders, uranium workers. So yes, this is a big part of the campaign, is to keep these folks' stories, these community stories front and center, as Martin said, and that's where you can learn more about those stories on the Voices tab. And then obviously we want this to go past just public education around our issues. We want people to actually get involved and start pushing for change. So this is where you can go to the Get Involved tab. Oh, so excuse me, not the Get Involved tab, the About and then Issues tab. And then if you go to Issues, you will see a collection of a ton of different nuclear weapons related policies that are getting covered by a lot of these different groups that have signed on. This includes some of the newer things that Congress has just kind of implemented with nuclear weapons, including never resume nuclear testing. We've added, some of you in PSR you're familiar with New Start, no first use. We've also implemented things like restoring Medicaid for Marshallese Island, or for the Marshallese Islanders. And then we also have compensation for people that have been exposed to radiation from production and testing, as well as all the way down here, the Treaty of Prohibition for Nuclear Weapons. And all of these have congressional legislation that you can look up regarding handling each of these issues. So, you know, for PSR, many of our folks would go into an office or congressional office around the anniversaries, and they would be talking about many of these issues that we've been focused on. Especially for PSR, something like the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is familiar. But if that congressperson that you're meeting with around this anniversary isn't comfortable supporting the treaty, there is still a ton of other ways that that congressperson, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on, can show that they support the commemoration of this anniversary, as well as the broader push for disarmament. Okay, and with that, I'll return to the slides. And then lastly, for me, I wanted to highlight the digital toolkit that will be available on the website soon. So this is not posted up on the website yet. We still have a design team finalizing a few things, but I wanted to give everyone on this call a sneak peek. So this digital toolkit will include a few resources for everyone to get plugged into the campaign digitally, relatively easy. This includes colors and images for the main messaging of the campaign, easy to use pre-made graphics for social media that takes advantage of those colors and styles. Main hashtags for the campaign are also featured here, If you haven't heard about them yet, the primary hashtag we're using for the campaign is StillHere. Somebody asked in the question box I saw earlier, why was this the main hashtag? And the group that came up with the main hashtag StillHere really decided that it was a good frame to both focus on the fact that there are still survivors of when these weapons have been used, and also survivors from communities that have been exposed to radiation. There's still survivors we need to talk about and lift up and get social justice, as well as there are still weapons. The weapons haven't gone away. The weapons that we've been fighting for 75 years are still here. So that was the main argument for that being the main hashtag. And then we also have a secondary hashtag, 75 years of, with a few examples, 75 years of resilience, 75 years of resistance. Given that PSR has a long history of doing these commemorations, we've also used 75 years of remembrance. So this is all going to be available to all the different organizations that are part of this campaign, and there will be much more than just what I'm showing here. And once it's finalized, you'll find it on the homepage of the website. We'll make it really easy, and if you're an organization that has a comms team, or if you're someone who's comfortable doing design, you can actually have all of these different symbols, the crane, the fist, all of the different things that we're using to symbolize this campaign. You'll have access to that, and you'll be able to make your own graphics catered to your own organization when this is released on the website. And now I will pass it to Martin to talk about local events.
Yeah, that means you've tuned into this. All politics is local. Now I wanted to, with regards to StillHere, hashtag StillHere, I would say another aspect of that is that we have survived. We have survived without another nuclear war. World War II was the first nuclear war. We haven't had another one. So fortunately, we're still here. And we'd like to keep on being here. I also want to point out that like Alan's, he's got this slide deck that he's using for the webinar, but it's important to realize that the Hiroshima-Nagasaki website that's been created is what we call unbranded, which means that no particular organization is taking credit for, you know, it's not owned by any particular organization. And that is one of the wonderful things that we've been able to do in this coalition. And I want to say thanks to everybody, including Alan and Anna, who've had a role in creating the website. So with regards to the local events last year, our summer interns at PSR tracked 73 different events around the country, and 73 different events that were related to Hiroshima and Nagasaki commemorations. And we had a calendar at the website, and that was the calendar that like people all over the country looked to find out what was going on, to find out what was going on in their own neighborhood, to find out what other organizations were doing. So we're trying to accomplish that again this year. And this year we would feed that information onto the website that Alan was just showing you. So we've been tracking what's going on with the organizations that did events last year. Of course, there's a pandemic happening. And so needless to say, a lot of the typical in-person large crowd gatherings, right, are going to be altered. But from what I've seen, that has not slowed down organizations. They're still taking action locally. And we have seen coming in from the information we have now, 50 organizations have said, yes, they're planning to do an event in 18 different states. And then there's another 8 organizations in 2 additional states that are saying, yeah, well, maybe, we're not sure what we're going to do yet. And we don't know the nature of all of these events yet. But we do know that there's going to be a lot, and that's great. I've heard about the Ribbon Project, which is sort of like, you know, making panels that quilt together. But we're very, very interested in what you are doing in your area. And if you are planning an event, please be in touch with us. Liberty Potter is the summer intern for the Nuclear Weapons Abolition Program. She's my hero already. She's like her 2nd week on the job. And that she'd be a good person to email, and we'll give you your email in a little bit. If you can give us details about what your event is going to be, or if you want to notify us that you're going to be doing an event, or you could send it to Alan or me, and we'll make sure that she gets to it. Okay. I think that's all I have to say, except that I want to emphasize that a big part of our work now in order to be able to do this calendar, and we're planning to actually have a clickable map at the website so that you can look for your state, you can see what's going on in your state. In order to get that done, all of you who are doing local events, we're depending upon you to make sure that you tell us the nature of your events. All right, and if we don't hear from you, we'll reach out to you, but we would appreciate your help keeping us informed. That's it, Alan.
Awesome, thank you, Martin. And now I will pass it to Anna Baker to talk about the national live stream event that's being planned for the anniversaries.
Okay, so as Alan just outlined, the website HiroshimaNagasaki75.org has a lot of the information about what I will discuss. So if you need more information or need a reminder, you can go to that website afterwards to find out more. Generally speaking, and there have been a few upsides of a worldwide pandemic, but one of the upsides is that we are all becoming more comfortable with virtual platforms and more connected in a lot of ways. And so this virtual event that will be held on both August 6th and August 9th, 2 separate days on the anniversaries of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that's the reason we chose those dates. The benefit of having this large virtual event or events is that we can highlight all of these events that are going on across the country, and this is really focused in US time zone. Anybody can join, but since it's in US time, we'll have a reflection of all the events that are going on across the country. We will feature a live video from events, and as well as pre-recorded videos from speakers who want to submit in advance. We will also have some videos that show some previous events and other creative projects. There may be some artful projects, some dancing, some, as far as the imagination can go, we can include you. So we're accepting proposals until July 1st for anybody who wants to be part of these events, whether that be reflecting what's happening in your local community or be a 5-minute presentation you've done in the past that you think could be worthwhile for a broader audience. But we are accepting proposals, and you do have to submit by July 1st, but you don't have to create your work by July 1st if you happen to be recording something. We just want to have a sense of what you're planning to submit and who's involved, how long it may be. I would imagine most of the submissions would be a few minutes to up to maybe 20 minutes or half an hour, but somebody could, if they really were interested in submitting for an hour-long event, you could submit for that too. We will accept these submissions on a rolling basis, so the sooner you get them in, the better. Each of these events on August 6th and August 9th will be a few hours long. We're not sure exactly how long yet. We will put the information on the website as soon as we know more, but right now, since we're still accepting proposals, we're thinking it would be anywhere between 3 and 4 hours on each of those days, and it could be up to 8 hours on both of those days. So the website, HiroshimaNagasaki75.org, will have eventually a schedule of the events that will be happening on those days. And there's a group of us who have become sort of the technology department for these events, and we will be holding this event on what's called StreamYard. It's a live stream platform that can feed to both YouTube and Facebook and other platforms also. It's a multi-stream. So we'll be streaming to different platforms. We will hand out the URL in advance so you can pass it around to your organization or to people who can just click on the link and find us easily. We will very likely have a translator, a Japanese translator. We're working on the details of that. We'll also be able to have some banners that explain, or tell people who the names and audience members are as they're speaking. So we're working on all of those details. And if people have suggestions for us, you can also send us email on the website. There is an email address as well you can reach us through. So I'm really excited about it. It feels like a very authentic response to the commemoration of both of the bombings. And it's nice that we are unbranded, as Martin had said. It's this event or these events are not owned by any one organization. Rather, we're all coming together as a group of groups and individuals who really care to reflect on this time and prevent any future war from happening in the future. So I hope you'll join us and submit a proposal if you have something in mind. Thanks, Alan.
No, thank you, Anna. So now we're going to open it up for questions. And as I said at the beginning of the call, in case you first joined or you just joined, if you have any questions, there should be a question box that you can type that into. But for now, what I'll do is I'll return to the top of the stack and start asking some of these questions. And I might ask one or two that we did answer just in case people joined late. So this first question is from Doug Dransfield, and he says, why hashtag StillHere? And I think a number of other people were curious of getting some clarification on that. And so please feel free after I answer if anybody else wants to expand on this. But when we were looking at hashtags for this campaign and locking down on them, that was quite a few months ago. I think the overarching goal was to put the stories of survivors first, and then putting the fact that these weapons are still here and still a threat after highlighting the survivors. And we felt that StillHere provided a context to do both. We're able to say the survivors are still here, here's their stories, here's what they've gone through. At the same time saying that despite us recognizing this and commemorating this for the last 75 years, the weapons are also still here and we have a long way to go. So when I was going through the process, when we were going through the process of locking down on those hashtags, that was kind of the narrative that emerged around that hashtag, but we decided to pair it with a secondary hashtag, and that's 75 years of, which puts kind of that focus on all of the events, all of the commemorations, everything that's been done over the past 75 years that's gotten us to this point. And if anybody else wants to expand on that, I'll leave room for that.
Alan, I just did want to also add that, this is Anna again, that the Hibakusha, the survivors also felt really closely connected with the phrase still here. I think because a lot of the devastation and the loss of all the people who are gone has historically, of course, and for obvious reasons, has overshadowed the survivors. But a lot of the survivors felt strongly that still here represented their feelings on the need to recognize those who are still around and won't be forever. We're looking at the aging generation of Hibakusha, and also that the weapons linger and prevent, they're really still a major threat for us. So I think you nailed that part though. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. The second question I have here is, do you have a link to the new petition? I'm not sure if that's talking about the positioning statement or the Hibakusha appeal, but both should be available on the Hiroshima-Nagasaki 75 website. The positioning statement is under the About tab on Partners, and then the Hibakusha appeal is on the Get Actions and then Get Involved tab. You'll be able to find the Hibakusha appeal. And by the way, I want to apologize to all the people who were saying that they were having trouble seeing my screen. Okay, so this says, I'm Kathleen, daughter of a Hibakusha, and wanted to know if individuals can sign the positioning statement. I have not seen a space for individuals to sign the positioning statement. That being said, we do have that Voices tab on the website to highlight different individuals and communities in more detail. But I don't think for the positioning statement specifically that we're using that as an individual signature, but rather an organizational signature. But that being said, I'm happy to follow up on that question with people that are more at the front of the positioning statement and see if they've had similar requests, Kathleen, and I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, I actually, Alan, this is Martin. I sent Kathleen a message and recommended that she send in that question to Lily.
Great.
Who will probably know what to do.
Great. Let's see. And okay, if you wanted to collect signatures for the Hibakusha effort, are there handouts or other things that we can use to explain the effort? So I know on the website, if you go to Get Involved under the Actions tab, and you put Sign the Hibakusha Appeal, that should immediately take you to a link that has a summary of the Hibakusha Appeal, as well as the full text of the Hibakusha Appeal under that. So that's a really helpful way if you just were to share it out. But I guess if your question is, Are there tools to maybe track the different signatures that you're getting? I'll just say that for PSR specifically, I know that we've really kind of looked at our Hibakusha effort, or I mean our Hibakusha state, oh my gosh, excuse me. Collecting signatures, we haven't focused on getting names or getting lists that specifically tell us who from PSR's listservs contributed to this effort. We just kind of saw this as something to lift up and get as many signatures as possible, step away from being able to take credit for how many of those signatures the PSR got, and rather just, you know, be excited by the fact that the Hibakusha appeal is getting 10 million responses. I hope that answers your question. If anybody else has things they want to add on to that, I'll leave that space. The next question I see here is work on Back from the Brink resolution locally on the list of actions? It is not on the list of actions. Again, I think this goes back to, we didn't want anyone to feel like this website unfairly lifted up one organization or coalition over the others. But that being said, if you go to the issues tab on the website and you scroll all the way to the bottom, it does link to the HR 302, which is supportive of the ban treaty and includes a lot of the Back from the Brink language. That is listed on the issues tab. And I think that is the last question that we have right now. If anybody else has questions, I'll leave space for you to add them to the question box. And if nobody else adds soon, we will just. Oh,
Alan, I saw a question about will you be able to make available a recording of this webinar? So I believe we know the answer to that question.
Yes, there will be a recording available after this webinar, and it will be sent out in a follow-up email. Can PSR invite public citizen to join in this campaign? We are interested in doing outreach to as many groups as we can. Obviously, Martin, myself, and other members of PSR are starting closely with our coalitions and partners that we work closely with. But if you have recommendations of people that you think we should be reaching out to, it would be great if you followed up with us after the call, and you'll see our emails are below at the bottom of these slides.
Yes, it would be great to invite public citizen to sign on to the joint statement and become part of this.
And then Martin, this might be a question for you. Someone asked, I can't see the name of the asker right now. Is there any organization doing a central organizing campaign similar to PSR?
Well, yes, there are several. First of all, I talked about ICANN. ICANN is involved in an international movement. There's also a group called Unfold Zero, and they are also trying to, I believe they're trying to organize this thing called a peace wave. They've done at least one of those in the past. And so this is, again, an international effort, but you could look up Unfold Zero and see what they're up to.
Thanks, Martin.
That's all I'm thinking of right now.
The next question we have is, does your group need to have a website to sign on? Again, other panelists, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that you don't. However, there is but basically, if you do have a website, we want to make sure that we can link to your website on the partner statement. But if you do not need a website to be a group that signs on.
No, and Alan, all we ask is that whoever signs on agrees to the position statement.
Right.
Essentially, there's a statement that's listed, I think there's a link to it on the website, that essentially says we agree that this movement to abolish nuclear weapons will take all of us, and it's a pretty broad statement, but we ask that you sign on before becoming involved with the events in August.
Perfect. Awesome.
Alan, can I go back?
Absolutely.
Remember how I was going, and I mentioned ICANN and I mentioned Unfold Zero, but I guess I want to dispel the idea that this is actually a PSR, that this Hiroshima-Nagasaki 75 is a PSR function. I mean, yes, it is, to the degree that we are a coalition partner, but it is not. PSR cannot possibly claim to have launched this gigantic coalition activity. We are a part of it, and this webinar actually was intended to make sure that all the people in the PSR network are up to speed on what's going on. The website was just launched, by the way, this last weekend, and parts of it are still under construction. But it's been a coalition effort involving, of those 137 organizations that have signed on, many of those organizations have been heavily involved in promoting this new website, in promoting this joint coalition activity, and some of the things that we'll be able to help with in the coming weeks are going to be coming from other organizations like Rethink Media, but a lot of the big organizations that you're familiar with have signed on and have been actively committing staff resources and other resources to make this coalition activity go. Just wanted to be clear about that. So it's not that it's PSR is doing a central organizing campaign. We're a cog. We're a cog, and one of the cogs in the big machine.
Yep. So this question seems to be kind of similar to other questions, which is essentially people saying, we're planning on doing a march or a caravan. Is this something that would be interesting for the live stream? And I would just answer that, yeah, if you think your local event has anything to do with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, regardless of what it is, especially if it's something new and creative, but even if it's been something you've been doing or in your community for a long time, we do want you to submit a proposal to get that included in the national webinar, because we want to make sure that we use the pandemic to allow new people to plug into your event. So yes, I would say if you have any inkling that your event might be good for this live stream, that you please submit a proposal. And then I have a question about being part of a podcast. Libby, please feel free to either reach out to myself or Martin, and our emails are at the bottom of the slides.
I've already gotten emails from Libby.
Great. So this says, how do I sign on? So this would be this is interesting if you're talking about a organization or an individual. As an organization, again, you can go to you can go to the website, HiroshimaNagasaki75.org, go to About, Partners, and then that's where you can find the positioning statement. And then if you want to individually sign on to the Hibakusha appeal, you can go to Actions, Get Involved, and there will be a link to sign on to the Hibakusha appeal there. Let's see. So this person asks, Martin, I'm sure that this is something that you brought up, I know, to me, so I'll pitch this to you. Someone said, are you aware that Veterans for Peace was originally scheduled to have its national convention in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, with events at Los Alamos on August 6th and August 9th? Now that the convention will be online and will start to have a significant focus on the 75th anniversary, with an opening planetary on August 2nd and closing on August 9th. Okay, this person was just saying, essentially, is this something that's on our radar for the planning committee?
Yeah, so John Deere, who's part of that, yeah, we've been hearing about what's been cooking for Los Alamos and Albuquerque. I mean, I've been hearing about that for at least a year now. So we knew that there was a big move afoot in that area. Of course, Los Alamos having a massive part in the whole Manhattan Project. So John Deere has put that request into us to be sure to include the online activities, and I directed him on how to send it in, how to send in that request so that it's considered with all the different requests for how to be part of the big virtual event. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah,
perfect. Someone asked, what's the link for signing on and submitting proposals? That's a really great question. I'll actually go back on my slide so that you can see. So it's right here on Be Part of the Event. Go to the website, HiroshimaNagasaki75.org, go to the Actions tab, click Join Our Event, and then there should be a Submit a Proposal button near the bottom of that. Let's see. So then someone asked, are there other pieces of U.S. legislation listed in the possible actions? I'm thinking of the other demands back from the brink besides the ban, no first use, take weapons off hair trigger, revoke presidential authority to launch nuclear weapons, defund trillions of dollars to rebuild the whole weapons infrastructure. So if you go to about, go to issues, yes, a couple of those do have their own standalone things, no first use, and I also believe sole authority also is a standalone part, as well as stop investing in new nuclear arms race. So yes, a lot of those are included on the issue section, as well as they link to individual pieces of legislation. And then, let's see. And then I think, oh, do you provide any tech assistance? This kind of speaks to the work that Martin and I and PSR knows we have in front of us. Some of the data that we've received from people who have signed on to the positioning statement have said, you know, we are going to do an event, or we're thinking about doing an event, but we aren't quite as sure basically how to manage the tech side of adapting to a virtual event. We have it in our agenda to follow up and reach out to all the groups that have said that they're thinking about doing an event, but they have concerns, and we're hoping that we can kind of provide some guidance on how to adapt your event post-COVID. And then obviously, as Anna said, when it comes to the actual national live stream event, if your proposal is chosen, there will be a team of people coordinating to make sure that you have everything on your end to be part of that, and making sure that time zones are lined up correctly. So yeah, there will be a team of people reaching out to you if you're chosen to be part of that larger live stream event.
And if you're planning, this is Martin, and if you're planning to submit a proposal for being part of that, consider a recorded segment, which will probably be, you know, you might be able to choreograph it. You might be doing something on a date other than August 6th and August 9th, in which case you'd want to do a recorded, you know, a recorded segment. And it might be technically easier to incorporate things that are recorded. The really tricky part, of course, is going to be with multiple live events going on around the country, you know, how to coordinate what gets aired when. That's going to be tricky.
And then it says, Martin, you mentioned the ribbon earlier in the call, and it says, how can you talk about how ribbon participants might be included in the August 6th and 9th online events? What tools we might have available? And I think you kind of answered that when it comes to what kind of assistance, but I would also just follow up Martin's comment about that seems like a really good opportunity for there to be a pre-recorded a section to be included in the larger webinar about the ribbon, and people could take the time to pre-record explaining the history of the ribbon, why it's important, and why it's being continued. But certainly it sounds like a perfect way to write a proposal for being included in the larger event, and I'm sure the ribbon would fit right in with the other things we're getting.
There might be ways to consider that artwork. I mean, it basically is artwork. So that might be, you know, there may be a way to incorporate art like that. I believe I was talking with Gwen Du Bois about the possibility of, you know, having it be the cutaway or the transition from one video segment to another video segment, right? It could feature one or two or whatever of these panels, or someone with their panel, you know, showing their panel, something like that. And that could all be pre-recorded, unless there's some particular event happening right then, August 6th, August 9th, that's super meaningful about the ribbon. Then you might want to be a live segment.
And then we just got a question: is there any consideration of current legislation to expand RECA to compensate more victims of nuclear testing in the downwind communities? And yes, if you go to the website, go to About, then Issues, if you scroll down, compensation for civilians exposed to ionizing radiation by nuclear weapons production and testing sites is the first issue that comes up. And if you go down to the bottom of that issue, you'll see HR 3783 and S947, which are both standalone bills to do exactly that, to compensate the victims of nuclear testing in downwind communities. And then I think that right now is the bottom of the question box, although to make sure I don't forget it, because I saw somebody asked, I wanted to show it one more time on my computer. if you go over to partners, this is where you'll find the positioning statement. Since quite a few people on the call were asking how they could sign on and where they could find it, this is the positioning statement that everyone has already signed. And then this is where, if you haven't signed already, you can become a partner and sign on. Just click sign on here if you haven't already. Let's see. And this says, someone asked, why was the power fist used? I think it was, there was a lot of different symbols used to talk about this specific event. The power fist was one of them, although I would say the power fist certainly isn't one of the main symbols we're using. The crane, more specifically, seems to be really the paper crane is really the main symbol we're using for this campaign, although we did want to acknowledge that, this fight for justice for these communities has been happening for a long time. And because we use 75 years of as one of our hashtags, 75 years of resistance was one of the themes that emerged. And I think that was just a symbol that people gravitated to for that specific message.
Also, I wanted to mention that from PSR's perspective, getting out from the yoke of the nuclear arms race and all of the spending on nuclear weapons, we see as one part of the just transition that needs to happen, so that we move into a different, we have a cultural shift into a different society, and that might have something to do with the justice aspect in that fist.
Let's see. All right, I think that looks like all of the questions I have in the question box right now. And I shared some links, considering someone asked for more links. So now if you look at the chat box, there'll be a link to the website in case you don't have that up already. As well, if you follow that second link, that'll take you to the positioning statement where your organization can sign on. And I think that's the end of questions now. I'll leave 1 more minute in case people have more questions. We want to be cognizant of time. We have 10 more minutes. I know that we have a lot of people have calls on Thursdays, so if you need to hop off, we understand, but I'll stay on in case people have more questions. And it's not looking like any are coming through yet, but we will not mind ending this early if there are no more further questions. I want to thank everyone who joined the call today. I hope it was helpful. As I said, you're welcome to follow up with any of us after this call. You're welcome to follow us with any of us after this call. We have our emails right here if you want to get them one more time. I'm Alan Hester. Martin Fleck at the National Office if you have questions for PSR National. Liberty Potter is our intern. If you have anything regarding your local event, please be sure to update her. And I'm happy to answer any questions via follow through on email. But thank you so much for taking time to be on this call today, everyone. And thank you so much to Anna and Martin for being here to answer questions.
Thank
Way
you.
to go, Alan.
Thank you.